Beto O'Rourke announces for president and says a bunch of weird stuff, including that we need to tackle slavery and segregation. Think about that. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez mocks thoughts and prayers following the mass shooting in New Zealand, and the Connecticut Supreme Court says that gun manufacturers can be sued for gun violence. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a 13-minute news hour.
God bless the United States of America.
Okay, here's some not breaking news. Robert Francis O'Rourke, better known as Beto, is announcing for president. You know, we all knew that was coming. You know, he's been hinting at it. The media's been building it up and everything. And we've just been having to follow all of his weird stuff for months now. You know, remember when he said, being an ex-El Paso congressman, that the actual border wall that's reducing illegal immigration in his town by 90%, that he would tear that down. He's against walls. He'd tear it down, let the illegals flood in, let the crime go way up, let the drugs go way up. It's okay. I want to tear that down. That guy. All right. Well, he just announced for president by putting out an over 3-minute video. He and his wife are sitting there, and the New York Times has a really interesting take on it because he's supposed to be, you know, so modern, so progressive, so cool. And yet his wife is there for 3.5 minutes doing nothing, saying nothing, just sitting there. And I want to do a little bit of what the New York Times has said, go over their report, because it's just really interesting given how O'Rourke portrays himself. So here's the latest from the New York Times. It says, the 3-minute clip quickly racked up thousands of shares, with some viewers excited by the prospect of his out-of-nowhere political rise. But others were put off by how his campaign deployed an age-old trope in American political theater, the silent, supportive wife. Throughout the video, Mr. O'Rourke's wife, Amy, sat quietly by her husband's side, periodically grasping his hand as he outlined his campaign vision. She occasionally smiled and gazed. All right, but I figured it out. Okay, she sat there quietly, but it was for a purpose. He really needed her to be there. And as you can see from the actual video, from the clips, she played a very important purpose. So let's dive into this clip. And it's, you know, Beto is all over the place. He's got his arm, you know, freaking out over here like this. And he's really into this alliteration type of, you know, he's talking about interconnected crises. And those crises lead to this little clip right here.
And they will either consume us, or they will afford us the greatest opportunity to unleash the genius of the United States of America. In other words, this moment of peril produces perhaps the greatest moment of promise for this country and for everyone inside of it.
So this moment of peril, perhaps, leads to potentially our greatest moment of purpose, or promise. So he's got the P's working, but did you see his wife? Okay, he's got the right hand going, right? And I think what she's doing, why she's there, why his advisors, you know, are probably pretty smart, is that she's actually keeping him from freaking out. Look at how she's holding his arm. I think she's actually keeping it there from doing a full-on freak out. So here's another clip, because he gets into some pretty bizarre things on what he wants to focus on as far as his presidential campaign. Take a look at this clip.
And all of us, wherever you live, can acknowledge that if immigration is a problem, it's the best possible problem for this country to have.
All right, so he says that immigration is the best problem to have. So for one thing, folks, you've got to see through this kind of stuff. And when your friends talk to you about how great O'Rourke is, or any of these other candidates, because they throw out lines like this, please confront them. Please debate them. Please, you know, explain to them what's going on. I mean, in general, we have no problem with immigration. You know, yes, we are a country built on immigrants, but we've kind of obtained superpower status now. If we stopped all immigration, you know, the country wouldn't just disappear overnight. So there is something to be said about, you know, screening and getting the best of the best into this country now. But he's making a false argument by saying immigration, because the real problem that dominates society now in discussions and debates and politics is illegal immigration, and he didn't even use that word. So illegal immigration is not the best problem to have. It's one of the worst things facing the country, and yet he spins it to some kind of weird, man, it's great to have immigration. That's our best problem. It's just nuts. But here's one that really just has me scratching my head. Take a look at this.
We can work on real justice reform and confront the hard truths of slavery and segregation and suppression in these United States of America.
Okay, so with all the issues facing the country, we need to confront slavery and segregation. Because, what do you say? What do you say to that? Slavery and segregation are problems that we need to address. Not the budget being out of control, not, keeping the economy running and unemployment and addressing terrorism and addressing the problem at our southern border. No, slavery and segregation. So we can see where exactly what his campaign is going to be all about. It's identifying specific interest groups that he can pull together, just like Democrats do, and offer, his campaign, his platform is so far left. It's healthcare for all. It's education for all. Basically, if there's any issue that you can put a for all after it, he's for it. And it doesn't matter how we pay for it. Climate, the whole thing is clean air for all. Yeah, well, what's that going to cost you? It doesn't matter to people like him, because he is just, it's a far left-wing agenda, and he is just like a hippie from 1960 that hasn't grown up yet and doesn't have a grasp of the real issues facing the country. But luckily his wife's there restraining him to keep him from just really freaking out. But slavery and segregation, those are the issues that we need to face right now. So let's move on from him to an issue that really bothers me. And it's bothered me a lot more lately because we see it a lot more from the left. And that is this propensity from them to mock thoughts and prayers. We know that Christianity has been under attack. People can't express their Christian faith outwardly anymore, it seems like, without being attacked by the left. We see it in judicial confirmations. We see it with people holding jobs. We see it with people providing services, being forced to by the government, even though it violates their religious beliefs. But now there's just more of this general mocking of people praying for things to get better. When crisis hit and Donald Trump is out there making a political statement and saying our thoughts and prayers are with the victims or with the families, things like that, we've had politicians and we've had the media come out and mock him for saying that. And it's just really, really disturbing, and it really aggravates me and angers me because they mock the power of prayer. And so last night in New Zealand, some terrorists, there was a mass shooting at 2 different mosques. At least 49 people are dead. And the prime minister comes out and makes statements and offers thoughts and prayers. And of course, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez can't, resist an opportunity to sound stupid or ridiculous or both. She decided to jump in. And here is what she tweeted. At first, I thought of saying, imagine being told your house of faith isn't safe anymore. But I couldn't say imagine because of Charleston, because Pittsburgh, Sutherland Springs. What good are your thoughts and prayers when they don't even keep the pews safe? All right, so yeah, this really bothers me on several levels. And luckily, there was a big social media backlash against her. And here are some of the tweets that kind of address what she said. Ben McDonald tweeted, yes, the one way to show empathy for people murdered at their place of worship is to mock prayer. All right. And again, that's the thing, is that you need to keep in mind that leaders, although sometimes they can influence legislation or put forward an executive order and take direct action, the other thing that leaders do, political leaders, whether it's a city council person or a leader of a country, is speak for their constituency. And the vast number of the constituency can't do anything except offer thoughts and prayers, kind words, sentiments, feelings, and of course, prayers that this situation will pass, that these people will heal, and that perpetrators will get caught. And so it's very, very important, and yet she mocks it. Another tweet from Jerry Dunleavy, he tweeted this: "If your first reaction to any tragedy is to call prayer useless and to dunk on your political opponents regardless of the facts, please take a hard look at yourself to figure out what brought you to this point." And that's absolutely right. I mean, if your reaction is to mock someone saying our thoughts and prayers are with you, and to mock all of those that that person represents, then you, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, have the problem. So what did she do? She didn't take that back or apologize. She doubled down on her comments. Here's a follow-up tweet that she put out there. She said, "Thoughts and prayers is reference to the NRA's phrase used to deflect conversation away from policy change during tragedies, not directed to PM Ardern, who I greatly admire." So, whatever. We're talking, bringing the NRA into this. We're talking about New Zealand. And one guy brought up a really good point. I want to put his tweet up here. This is from Drew McKissick. He said, "What good are your suggested gun control laws, considering New Zealand's are held out as an example to emulate by so many like you?" So she mocks thoughts and prayers while embracing gun control. Well, what good is gun control when you've got a crazy person out there? Nothing will stop a crazy person from doing crazy things unless perhaps they feel that they are in a situation where they are in danger, where that person might actually end up being killed, because people will defend themselves. And this is what the left is all about, is not being able to defend yourself, being defenseless. And that way, the only thing you can rely on is government. And that's what this is all about. They mock thoughts and prayers, but they want you to embrace government as the person to protect you. God doesn't need to protect you. You don't need to protect you. Only the government. And that's what it's all about. And so finally, in our last segment, I just want to touch on really quickly the Connecticut Supreme Court overturned a lower court's ruling saying that Remington, the maker of the AR-15 that was used in the Sandy Hook elementary school mass shooting back in 2012, can be sued, can be held liable potentially for those shootings and those deaths. And here is what the Washington Post reports on what came down out of the Supreme Court's ruling, Connecticut Supreme Court's ruling. The groundbreaking 4-3 decision overturned a lower court ruling barring the lawsuit, which was brought by the estates of the 9 victims of Adam Lanza, who was armed with a high-powerful rifle during the assault on the school. Remington owns Bushmaster Firearms International. But the decision was narrow, with the liability for gun makers based essentially on how they advertise their weapons rather than on the sale of such powerful weapons to third parties who then committed horrible crimes. The court said companies that market military-style guns to civilians as a way of killing enemies could be violating state fair trade laws. So what they're saying is it's based on the commercial, and they go on and add this little part. The families allege, for example, that Bushmaster product catalog shows soldiers on patrol in jungles along with the phrase, "When you need to perform under pressure, Bushmaster delivers," and promotes the rifle to civilians as the ultimate combat weapon system. Well, for me, that's exactly what I want. I'm not a hunter. I've got friends who are. I've never been one. Yet I own pistols. I own rifles. I've had a number of courses, both in pistol and rifle, for tactical defense, movement, cover, concealment, and all of this stuff. And why? Because I want to be able to defend myself and my family from bad guys, okay? So a commercial design that this weapon or this, attachment will you keep you safe from your enemies is exactly directed to a person like me. It's not about just hunting. That's not what the Second Amendment is about. And yet they're trying to go after this Remington because they're advertising to people who want to defend themselves. It's absolutely outrageous, folks. So anyway, that's our show for today. Please subscribe. Please have a great weekend, and we'll see you Monday. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a 13-Minute News Hour.